Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us today on the first part of our two-part webinar series. Today, we're going to be talking about data security posture management. We're going to be joined by Edwin Bowers, who's worked in the cybersecurity industry for over 10 years. He now heads up the data security sales practice at Smarttech247, who are a leading Forcepoint managed service partner. Edwin, if you'd like to take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thank you all for taking the time to understand how AI tools like data security posture management, or DSPM for short, are really reshaping our approach to data security. This is going to be the focus of the first webinar, and something I'm personally really excited about because data security projects have previously been quite challenging. And DSPM has really transformed the whole data security journey and unlocked so many benefits for organizations. But before I dive into how DSPM works, I want to explain why data is increasingly important for modern organizations, and the current challenges businesses have today around securing that data. So in 2019, The Economist coined the analogy, data is the new oil. And that's still relevant today because data is a lot like oil. It costs a lot of money, can't flow anywhere, and if it leaks, it can be damaging. Now, modern companies are really trying to use their data as a competitive advantage and are democratizing data, which means they're making it available to more people so they can better harness the value of that data. So the biggest winners nowadays are those operating a data-centric approach and looking to generate as much value as possible from their data. And because data is your most valuable and vulnerable asset, it's what the hackers are actually trying to steal when they gain access to an organization. And it's not just external hackers that organizations should be concerned about, but also insider threats or accidental disclosure of data that can be damaging. Now, every organization has sensitive data, and sensitive data is confidential information that can cause financial, reputational, and compliance damage if exposed. And this can be things like intellectual property, health records, source codes, driving licenses, credit card numbers, and even employee login credentials can be sold on the dark web. So in Santander's recent data breach, the hacking group Shiny Hunters tried to sell 30 million customer details and staff information for $2 million US. And in the same spree related to the attack, Ticketmaster had 560 million records, including names, addresses, email addresses, phone numbers, some credit card details, and ticket sales. And this database is currently for sale for $500,000 US on the dark web. And according to Hudson Rock, the hackers supposedly tried to sell the database back to Ticketmaster for $20 million US. So with these potential monetary rewards and the value you can derive from data, it's no wonder hackers are desperate to steal it. And data can't be unbreached. If an attacker exfiltrates your data, then all your security controls have failed, which is why data security is so, so important. And to be able to properly protect your data, there are 5 key questions that if you can answer as an organization, then you're doing a good job and you probably don't need to listen to the rest of this webinar. But unless you're a Smarttech and Forcepoint customer, I suspect that these questions will be quite hard to answer. And they are, do you know what your sensitive data is? And this includes both known and unknown data. As most companies know what their crown jewels are, but there are lots of data around that they probably don't know about. And this can be things like source code, intellectual property, customer records. Basically, you cannot protect what you don't know exists. So understanding what your sensitive data is a vital first step. Do you know where your sensitive data is? So you need to understand data wherever it flows. And this could be AWS, Azure, Dropbox, SharePoint, data in rest, and data in motion. Now, we've seen in recent breaches, developers or data engineers copying customer data into less secure development environments from production for testing purposes. And often this duplicated data is forgotten about. You need to understand, do you know who has access to that sensitive data? And access to sensitive data should be ruled by the principle of least privilege. Employees should only have access to the minimum amount of data needed to do their job. If companies don't monitor permissions, the longer employees are in companies, they'll attain privilege creep and gain access to more and more data sources, perhaps without even being aware of it. And do you know why they have access to that sensitive data? Now, once you understand who has access, you can understand why they have access And if they don't need it, you can remove it to lower the risk of data exposure. We once found source code that finance teams had access to who didn't even understand what it was they could view. And finally, do you know what they're doing with that sensitive data? Are they sharing it with third parties? Are they using it as test data for their LMMs? Are they copying it into areas that don't have strong security controls? Are they uploading it into ChatGPT or other GenAI tools? And the reason these questions are actually very hard to answer is because organizations have so much dark data, which is data they don't even know exists. And in some cases, they can be blind to up to 85% of their data. Now, of course, not all of it is sensitive, but because there is so much unknown data, there is often little or no security controls in place. So if a hacker was to gain access to an organization, they're easily able to find valuable data stored in a variety of places that they can try and obtain a ransom payment for or sell on the dark web. And the reason you have so much data you don't know about is because modern businesses are democratizing data and expanding who has access to it. And they're using a variety of tools to tackle specific data challenges. And this makes teams more data-driven, but also means the attack surface sprawls into dozens or hundreds of potential data stores. And the elasticity of cloud makes it easy to spin up new services and retain larger amounts of raw data. And this has led to data sprawl, which refers to the huge amount and variety of data produced by businesses every day, particularly due to the increased number of software, mobile apps, storage systems, and data formats each company relies on. And these different tools have difficulty because they can't fully understand the context or the importance of data they're tasked with protecting. They lack the ability to recognize the significance of or sensitivity of certain pieces of data, which can lead to ineffective protection measures. And one of the biggest risks for organizations is shadow data, which is data that's backed up, copied, or replicated to a data store that's not protected by the same security team's policies or controls as the original data. Now, shadow data can be found in spreadsheets, local copies of databases, emails, and even presentations. I myself have previously been guilty of using data from CRMs, copied into spreadsheets, and saved into an open sharing repository such as SharePoint, and then sent to colleagues over channels like Slack or Teams. It's incredibly easy to do, and employees will do it because it's often the path of least resistance, and they're not thinking about security. And organizations also have large amounts of rot data, which is redundant, obsolete, and trivial data. And this is unneeded duplicates of files, email attachments, and documents, content that businesses don't actually need to keep. And this is because when employees are working, they'll often copy data into different places, save data that they don't really need because they think they will in the future, or they'll keep outdated data that is no longer relevant. It's the same as not clearing out clutter in your house. Over time, you'll amass so much and lose track of it. So you need to clear out your virtual garage. So because of this undiscovered, unseen, unidentified, and unknown data, the new category of data security posture management was developed to overcome these challenges and help answer those previous 5 questions. So what is DSPM? Well, Gartner identified it as an emerging and transformational technology, and they define it in the following way. Data security posture management provides visibility as to where sensitive data is, who has access to that data, how it has been used, and what the security posture of the data stored or application is. And what this means is DSPM takes a data-centric, inside-out approach to data protection, focusing on the actual data, because if you don't know what data you have, then you don't know how to protect it. So visibility is the first step. So this data discovery is where DSPM starts by automatically locating and cataloging data sources throughout the organization. And these can be file systems, cloud storage, third-party applications, anything where data resides. And the purpose of this is to help organizations understand where their sensitive data actually is. So DSPM will continuously monitor and discover new data as it's created and notify security teams on any discovery that could be a risk. Whenever we perform the data discovery piece, we always find data that shocks customers. And this can be really sensitive information like potential acquisition targets or employee salary and bonus details. Once the data sources are identified, DSPM automatically classifies the data according to sensitivity importance, and your organization's taxonomy. So we'll look to see if the information is PII, financial data, or intellectual property. And does it contain regulatory data from compliance requirements such as GDPR, HIPAA, or PCI DSS? So it will automatically tag all known and unknown data. So the third stage is mapping the flow of sensitive data across the organization. And mapping helps businesses to visualize where the data is flowing and how the data is accessed, processed, and transmitted. So it provides visibility into which data has flows that are publicly facing and what data is shared with third parties or risky users. So DSPM will track data lineage to understand where it came from and who had access to that data, which is great because you might be able to find it, but if you don't understand how it got there in the first place, it will probably return again. So the next stage is risk assessment and prioritization, and DSPM identifies potential risks and vulnerabilities like unauthorized access, data leakage, or lack of encryption, and it prioritizes your risks accordingly. So DSPM will look for any misconfigurations. It will look for over-entitlements where users have been granted privileges or permissions they don't need. And DSPM will evaluate your data in the context of your organizational policies and against the standards set by any legislation to see if there are any policy or compliance violations. And this is really important as it helps teams understand where their biggest risks are. And finally, DSPM provides real-time remediation and prevention through automated workflows set up to protect against exposure. So it would give you reporting and real-time dashboards that prioritize vulnerabilities according to severity, so that security and risk management teams can focus on remediating the most critical issues. Now, a lot of DSPM tools out there are passive DSPMs, which might tell you that there are 80,000 exposed sensitive files, but will not fix it. And manually going through all of these would be incredibly boring and take months. So luckily, Forcepoint DSPM will allow you to automate a remediation or facilitate a one-click response to remediate the risk. And the reason it's in a circular motion is because DSPM continuously monitors the environment for new data assets and will continually audit those assets for potential security risks. And this is really powerful because so much data is created or duplicated on a daily basis. And you want a tool that can automatically discover, classify, and prioritize the importance of this data. And this is why the category of DSPM has been created. But these data security challenges are nothing new. So why are they now becoming a boardroom conversation? Well, boards understand that data is the new lifeblood of the organization. And if you want to maintain competitive advantage, you need to protect and utilize your proprietary data. So companies are holding much more data than they ever have before. And this data has become an unmanageable problem because the volume of data will keep growing and you have so many more people touching that data. You just need to look at how many data engineers and data scientists there are today compared to before. And we want different authorized employees utilizing that data. But the previous problem with data security was that it was seen as a blocker to the business and stopping productivity, whereas DSPM has been seen as more of a business enabler. And the adoption of cloud has really driven the ability to collaborate and share data. It's now so easy to create, delete, or move data around in a cloud environment, which then makes it incredibly hard for security teams to manage because the cloud attack surface is constantly changing. Now, cloud has radically changed our approach to data security, and we've had a shift in our mindset and how we tackle it. It used to be easier to protect our data through an outdated castle and moat approach, where security teams spent their time and resources securing the perimeter to protect the data assets within. Nowadays, employees can access data from anywhere and from any device, so identity has become the new perimeter, which is why we've seen the emergence of zero trust and organizations taking an assumed compromise approach where the assumption is that an adversary has already gained a foothold within your network, and then we can see what the blast radius is, how far can they traverse across the network, and what data can they access. So previous approaches to securing data focused on securing network entry points or on managing permissions, tools, and user access are no longer sufficient for the cloud era. We've also seen regulation and security frameworks really emphasize the importance of data security. The likes of DORA, NIS2, ISO 27001, and GDPR have focused on having sufficient detection and monitoring capability for data security. And we know of some organizations recently that have failed audits off the back of this. And finally, the emergence of DSPM with an independent AI mesh is an absolute game changer. And this is what Forcepoint's AI mesh looks like. Now, it might look a little messy, but what I'm trying to show you is that we're not just looking for regexes or regular expressions or keywords to pick up sensitive data. If you look at HR data, for example, it will encompass numerous data points to give you an accurate data asset classification. And many organizations are understandably looking to leverage AI in 2024 and automate as much as possible. And the recent advances in AI and machine learning has meant previous data security problems are now actually solvable with DSPM. In particular, data discovery to classification was traditionally the hardest and time-consuming part of data security projects. And now AI supercharges discovery and classification. And at the heart of Forcepoint's DSPM lies a powerful AI engine that leverages machine learning to continuously improve its accuracy. So it will constantly analyze data to refine its understanding and accurately identify your sensitive information. And for organizations with highly sensitive information, Forcepoint DSPM offers custom model training, which allows you to tailor the AI model to recognize and classify your specific data types. And through the power of machine learning, this custom model would continuously improve over time. Now, there are many benefits of Forcepoint's DSPM, and I won't name them all, but the key ones are it provides visibility to not just the security teams, but also the department heads or data and system owners in a matter of minutes. So the time to value is incredibly fast. And at the moment, security leaders don't know what data is out there, and they don't know whether it has the proper security posture. So for security teams, knowing where all their data is immediately brings back control into their hands on a continuous basis, as Forcepoint DSPM will automatically keep an eye on all data creation, movement, and modification, and uphold your policies to protect your sensitive data. It will show you your shadow data that is not properly classified, secured, or managed, posing risks to the organization. It will show you excessive or unnecessary permissions and privileges, risky users, and who has access to your data internally and externally. So once you have this visibility, you can assess your actual risk posture and prioritize remediation. And because Forcepoint's DSPM is not a passive tool, it allows you to automatically remediate these risks, saving you time. The longer it takes to fix issues like eliminating risky permissions, misconfigurations, ghost users, sharing links, the greater the risk of a data breach. And Forcepoint DSPM importantly helps you with your data security compliance obligations and supports over 35 built-in compliance frameworks. And these can be things like GDPR, NIST, PCI DSS, or even EU export controls. But my favorite benefit is that Forcepoint DSPM allows you to improve your data hygiene by removing duplicates and data that you don't actually need, which reduces your attack surface, makes it easier to protect the smaller data sets, and can reduce your storage costs. The cost savings alone just from storage could be more than the tool actually costs. So we met with a customer earlier in the week who stores hundreds of millions of files, and of which half of them were duplicates and 75% were rot data. So they can now reduce their data footprint to a manageable size and save loads on storage costs. Ultimately, DSPM allows organizations to achieve their data security goals and objectives and doesn't create friction. It doesn't disrupt business workflows and is a business enabler to allow teams to collaborate and utilize their data. Combined with potential cost savings and reduced risks, it's a no-brainer for organizations to look at through a data risk assessment, and why there is so much hype around DSPM at the moment. Now, DSPM is a foundational part of the entire data security journey, and it's really the missing piece to achieve data security maturity. And it encompasses everything in the shaded gray area on the left of the graph. And we typically start off with a data risk assessment, which is an agentless scan of your environment to uncover your dark data, critical data security risks, and provide you with a clear path to remediation. The data risk assessment typically lasts 1 to 2 weeks to give you a flavor of what Forcepoint's DSPM tool looks like, and it takes minutes to set up. It's a completely free, no strings attached assessment that delivers so much immediate value. Now, Forcepoint are doing a webinar tomorrow to talk through the right-hand side of the graph to explain how DSPM is incorporated into your whole data security journey and can make tools like DLP or CASB more effective. So thank you for your time. Please reach out to myself, John, or Chris if you want to understand more or would like to undergo a free data risk assessment. I challenge any organization that thinks they know where their data is to run this, and you'll be genuinely shocked at what you actually have in your environment. Thank you again. We'll open it up to any questions. I can see we have a few in there already.
Thank you, Edwin. Folks, if you don't mind asking your questions, I'll ask Edwin then directly. There is one in, Edwin. Who owns the AI model? Will Forcepoint be able to view my data?
So it will be your own private AI model. So Forcepoint or Smarttech, if we're running this as a managed service, would never see your data, would never touch your data or alter it. So it's completely set up in the customer environment.
Thanks. And then there's another one. You're just giving my security team more issue to fix. So is this just going to give more issues to security teams?
I love this question because there's a genuine concern of security teams who are already, often stretched pretty thin. So, look, Forcepoint DSPM will allow you to automate remediation in certain cases, but more importantly, it empowers your department heads or data owners to own their own data. So you can show your CFO that they have exposed risky finance data, or you can show HR that they've got sensitive employee records without any security controls protecting it. And you can task them to fix it and show them on a dashboard where their own risks are, which ultimately gets them thinking more about security because they can visualize it.
Thanks. And then is DSPM only for cloud native environments?
No, it's not. Unless, of course, you're only in the cloud, then it would be. But look, cloud has really magnified this problem. And, there are some DSPM tools out there that will focus only on cloud. But, as I mentioned earlier, you need to find your data wherever it is. And this can be, on-premise and in the cloud.
Thank you, Edwin. Is there any more questions come in? We give it another minute.
John, do you want to perhaps talk about your webinar tomorrow and what's covered?
Yeah, so tomorrow we're going to concentrate on the top right hand side of that maturity curve that Evan showed earlier on, and in simple terms, it's DLP. Edwin asked 5 very simple questions. Do you know what your sensitive data is? Do you know where it is? Do you know who has access to it? Do you know why do you have access to it? And the crossover with this webinar today, what are they doing with it? So visibility and control into what users and groups and subcontractors, etc., are doing with data, and all of the different control points in which users can actually consume data and egress data out of your organization, whether they're bad actors or whether they're just inside users who are just accidentally utilizing data incorrectly. So tomorrow's webinar is going to concentrate on that, and it's going to complete the DLP maturity curve. The last point I'll mention on it is a lot of organizations are afraid to deal with the whole data area, and they're almost, ignoring it, and they don't want to be aware of some of the areas that might actually prompt them to do something about it. We're going to show you how you can start off on the maturity curve and end on the maturity curve, where you get a handle on your data and then you control what people can and cannot do based on who they are, what group they're in, what device they're on, what geographical location they're in, and so on and so forth. And finally, creating a data policy once, layering it in across all of the control points in one quick click, rather than have to replicate the same policy in 5 or 6 different point products and hope that they're orchestrated in some way. So that's tomorrow morning. So I look forward to that.
Thanks, John. Just one more question there. How does your DSPM framework integrate with existing security tools and processes to provide a unified approach to data protection and incident response?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with that. And then obviously, I guess from John, your side, it does obviously integrate with DLP and CASB and things. So the DSPM framework, it has out of the box, integrations into various AWS, Azure, GCP and the likes. But there's also connectors to, various other, SaaS platforms in particular, like, Salesforce and so forth. And in terms of obviously the GRC policies and frameworks, so it really helps on that maturity graph that I showed earlier. It's obviously really important to integrate into your policies, and how do you handle data? What is the sensitive data? Having that data catalog that we talk about as DSPM. So the benefits of DSPM, it will show you all of that data that you have, and it will catalog it for you. So then you can use that as part of your policies and your procedures and understand how to protect it. And then obviously, it allows you to have that one policy, which I'll probably let John talk about more from a Forcepoint side.
Yeah, I'll give you one example, and there is many examples. You could imagine a situation where you've got a taxonomy of, confidential, public, private, and so on and so forth. And maybe 2 years ago, you introduced that taxonomy into your organization. So all data that's created or modified and changed and so forth from that point onwards adheres to that taxonomy. But you've got information in, SMB storage, net filers, maybe cloud storage and so forth that has never been touched since you introduced that taxonomy. DSPM will take that taxonomy and it will map it in against what it finds in terms of all of those different criteria that it's looking for. And it can retrospectively apply that taxonomy or classification to all of the data prior to when you started 2 years ago. So that when that data starts to move around the organization after the fact, it's retrospectively classified. And in the context of DLP, which is the top right-hand side of the maturity curve, when that data is then seen leaving through different channels, depending on users and groups and so on and so forth, the DLP solution will honor that taxonomy and then apply policies based on, Joe Blogs can do X, Y, and Z, provided he is in this location on this device and so forth. But if he's not, well, then, we will stop that information leaving. Final point I'll make on it is insider risk. So what we will also talk about tomorrow in terms of unified approaches, users on a regular risk score from an insider threat point of view are able to do certain actions in terms of data. But if the risk score goes to an elevated level, then the policy that would ordinarily allow them to do something with data, then it becomes a lot more restrictive. So we're talking about the overall approach. We will talk about that a little bit more, but we need a little bit more time for that.
And just one more thing, I think that question mentioned incident response. So obviously from Smarttech side, we're a managed detection response company. We have our security operations center, with our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 analysts. So, we do a lot of incident response initiatives as part of this, and we do manage DSPM. So for a lot of organizations, they can integrate it into their own SIEM, into their own SOC, and have their own analysts look at it. Or, we can also manage it on their behalf. So we can look at any of their data risks, and we can highlight them. This is a risk. There's, over permissions, or there's sensitive data that's exposed. That if there's no automated workflow, then you need to go and fix it, or we can work on playbooks with the organizations and then fix it on their behalf.
Excellent. Thank you both. I guess we'll pick up this conversation tomorrow morning then.
Fantastic. And obviously as I said, I'm very excited about DSPM as a new tool, and I hope that came across today to the audience, and I hope that people do see the benefit of even undertaking a data risk assessment and just having a look at the data in their environment, because this technology wasn't here a couple of years ago, and really with AI and the way that it has really improved over the last couple of years, it's finally made data security possible for organizations. So, I hope that came across, and I hope people get as excited as I do about it.
Thank you, Edwin. Thank you, John.